So welcome to our presentation tonight. What we're going to be talking about is teens and technology, what we know already today about what your teens are going through and what that looks like. We're going to kind of get a glimpse into the future of teens who have grown up with technology. And we're going to talk about what it is that you can do today, right? What are the things that you can do to help your teens wherever they are on their journey right now, whether they have a phone and access to the internet already or not. In my experience, most teens have access to the internet. Most kids today have access to the internet from a very, very young age. So it doesn't actually matter. We've got somebody, Kara, I believe it is, with some background noise. If you can mute yourself. For some reason, it's not letting me mute you. There we go. Sorry, it's a little distracting. So no matter where you are right now, this is definitely the right conversation for you. What I'm going to do is I'm going to share with you my screen. I don't know about you, but I'm a visual learner. So it's much easier for me when I've got something to follow along with, which is why I've created this. Feel free to follow along. Okay, here we go. Play. All right, sometimes we are hiding, it's hiding the play button. No, that is a challenge. There we go. Okay, fantastic. So as I said, what we're talking about is teens and technology, a look into the future, and what we can do for your teens today, which is really what's important. What we're going to be covering on our call tonight is, first of all, the questions. We're going to say what we already know. Right? We already find out from research, what do we know about teens who are growing up and entering college and the workforce? How is social media impacting who they are, who they have become, and what's going on with them? We're going to talk about why this is happening. And when we talk about what's happening, we're going to talk about the things that parents have chosen to do, and hopefully this will give you some insight into what you're doing right now or not doing right now and how that can be done differently. We're going to talk about some very concrete things that you can do today to make a difference for your teen so they go through this journey in the most successful way possible, because the reality is that we are all learning through experience about this world of technology. And then we're going to talk about some concrete steps that you can take, next steps that you can take moving forward. So one of the things, well, the first thing is that, again, who is this for? It's whether your teen is on the internet or not. Again, as I was saying, 3, 4, 5-year-olds are already connected to the internet. The other day I walked in on, me and my friend, I should say, walked in on her daughter who's about 5, and she was watching something on YouTube, which her mother thought was a child's show, and turned out to be something very risque, even though they have parent controls on their internet and supposedly everything is set up for success. Nevertheless, she was being exposed to things that her mother really, really did not want her to be exposed to. So as soon as they have access, if they're taking your phone, if they have access to an iPad, all these things, or many of the things that we're talking about, become true for them. If you're getting ready to give them a phone, so whether they are or they're not, this is still the right call for you. So what are we seeing today? So you see on the screen what the impact is, and we'll talk about that in a minute. But what I want to take you through first is what actually happens, right? One of the things that we see today, and we see this in research, we see some of the big speakers like Simon Sinek talking about things like this, which is, what does the workplace look like today with young people who are entering, or for that matter, in college, right? We have lots of kids who are entering college under a tremendous amount of stress. We see a lot of breakdown. We see a lot of depression and anxiety. We have kids who are starting college and dropping out of college. We see many kids in the workforce who are really unhappy. They're miserable, right? And if you, from the outside, right, and I look at my my neighbor's son, he's 28, and he is very smart. He works in a high-tech company. He makes a tremendous amount of money. does not work very much, which is, that's talk to his company about, but at least the way he tells it doesn't work very much, gets unbelievable amounts of perks and benefits to try to keep him around. And still he's unhappy and thinking of going out a part-time or maybe doing something else, or just unhappy with the job that he has. And we see, we kind of ask ourselves, well, how is this happening in our world today, right? How can we have a situation where it seems like our kids have possibilities that, definitely their grandparents and great-grandparents and possibly us didn't have, and yet we see higher levels of anxiety, higher levels of depression. We see self-harm in a way that we never have seen before. Okay, I have a cousin who was a cutter when she was in her teens, and it was unusual, right? Now it is, not only do we see a lot of cutting, and I've seen it in my clients as well, but I've also, seen and met and talked to girls who try it because they've heard about it. So they give it a try, right? Which I know when I was a teenager, I didn't even know that it existed, right? It wasn't even in my sphere of life. And that's true about, various eating disorders, which I kind of knew that they existed, but not really. So, but today girls, they know about them, they talk about them, and sometimes they experiment with them. And that's part of the challenge with this, tremendous amount of information and exposure that they have, which it has its good and its bad, especially if it's not being moderated, which is one of our challenges. On the other hand, as I was mentioning, we see lower levels of satisfaction. We don't really see perseverance. We don't see kids who are able to go in and stick it through, right? If it doesn't work for them, or if they're unhappy, like, this young man that I was talking about, right? He was in a different job and he was like, you know what, I don't really feel like it. And he left. So despite the many things the company did in order to invest in him and try to keep him long-term, it was really a moment's notice and second, kind of an afterthought of like, you know what, I'm going to go somewhere else. We're seeing very low levels of self-esteem and really perception of self and whether I'm worthy or good enough or match up to everything and everybody around me. Now, given everything I just said, we also see incredible teens, and we see incredible belief in something that hasn't changed, is that teens believe that they can change the world. They believe they have the power, they believe they have the strength and the capabilities, and we encourage them to do that. We see the internet used for good, in good ways, in order to make that happen. Just please mute yourself if you are not muted right now. And one of the things that we do, and I can tell you from working for many, many, many years in the educational field, is that one of the words that we use today nonstop is the word leadership. And we tell kids that they're leaders and they have unbelievable capabilities, but part of the problem that we have is we don't actually teach real leadership. And that's not for today's call, so we're not going to get into that right now, but real leadership is really requires actually giving the teens real things to do, and not what I've seen in my work when I was managing teen programs in the greater New York area, where it was, let's give the kids the title, but they don't actually have to do the work. And that happens in, like, for example, youth groups that I was helping supervise, but it also happens in our own home. We tell them they're responsible for X, but they know that if they don't do something, we're going to fill in the space and do it for them. Whether that is, homework, talking to the teacher when they didn't do something that they should have done, or many, many other options and things. So we will touch on that a little bit in a little bit. So why is this happening, right? Why on the one hand do they have unlimited possibilities and opportunities, and at the same time, we're seeing these high levels of stress and anxiety, depression, self-harm, and just really some unhappy kids. So the first thing that we're going to talk about is parenting and failed parenting strategies. And you may want to write some of these things down so you can come back and visit them later as you're going along. One of the things, there are a few things that we have set up, and especially in the United States, but not only, and I know that not everybody listening, not tonight and not in the future, is from the United States. But we have set up our kids where they're always special. They are the best. They are my prince or my princess. They're amazing. We surround them in cotton ball and just make them feel like they are the most special in the world. And I'll explain a little bit later why this is a problem. When we really don't let them understand where they fit in the group, but rather highlight how special they are. We create situations where if they want it, they get it, right? They want something, they bug us enough, they annoy us enough that we just give it, right? We give it to them because we don't want to fight, because we don't have time, because we're busy. And so if they want something, they get it. I know when I was a kid, I can think of multiple examples of things that I really wanted, right? That I saved. There was a pair of jeans that I really wanted, right? And I saved for, more than 6 months to get these pair of jeans, right? My parents couldn't afford it or didn't want to spend the money on an expensive pair of jeans. Please make sure that you're muted because we can hear your dishes. Which I'm happy you're doing. I have no problem with that. Just please mute yourself. And I learned a lot of things throughout the way. One of the things that we see today is we really see kids who are asking and they're getting, right? I see it with my nephews all the time, right? They want something. What do? They ask my parents for it for their birthday, right? So there is rarely something that they want that they are not getting. The next thing is that we don't teach them what I call real responsibility and accountability for their own mistakes, right? They get honors in classes which they don't necessarily deserve, okay? They get into trouble for various reasons. One of my clients just got in trouble because she did very poorly on a math test. And it took everything in her mother and working with me to not swoop in and save her. Because she's 16 and it's an age where that grade counts. It counts for looking into the future. And so her mother wants to save her and she's thinking about her future. But if we scoop in and save them, they don't have the ability to learn what it means to be accountable for your actions, right? And be responsible for what it is that they're doing. So many things that we're doing are actually setting them up to fail in the future. We need to create situations where they are responsible, right? And real responsible, not fake responsibility. Real responsibility where if they don't do, either it doesn't get done, right? And they're held accountable, whether by the school or their teachers. And sometimes today we have to help the schools realize that they need to do their part in holding their kids accountable, right? I'll never forget when I was a teenager and I never did homework, never. And I sat there at a parent-teachers conference and my teacher said to my father, she said, Tova doesn't do her homework. And my father, God bless him, my father is an educator. And he looked at the teacher and he said, "Is my name Tova?" And she clearly looked at him confused and said, "No, she's, no." He said, "Am I in high school?" And she was like, "No." And he's like, "Correct. I did my homework. I graduated. If you have a problem with Tova, talk to Tova." Right? Which put me in a place where then I had to face it. Mind you, I never did homework anyhow and survived to tell the tale. But I was the one who had to, face the music, so to speak, for my choices and my actions. Right? He wasn't going to save me from the choices that I was making on a regular basis. The other thing that we see is everybody's a winner. Everybody is a winner. Everybody gets a trophy. And one of the things that creates is it creates a situation which is not good for the winners, and it's not good for those who actually won, and it's not good for those who didn't put in the effort, because it makes the winning not really worth it, right? The ones who make the effort are like, well, what's the point? Because everybody's going to win. And the ones who didn't make the effort actually feel worse about themselves. They don't feel worthy. So it's often done in an attempt to make everybody feel good, but it's actually not done in a way that makes that happen. So if we gave out different awards for different qualities and, various things, this week we're going to give an award to James for making everybody laugh all the time, right? And making the environment in which we play soccer is such a great environment. That would be awesome, right? On the other hand, my nephew, I'll never forget this, was the worst soccer player ever. I had to work hard to convince his parents to take him out of soccer class because he's a dreamer, he's an artist. And he would literally sit there during soccer and talk to the goalie and talk to his friend and wander off. And I'll never forget the weekend that he came home with a trophy as the best soccer player. And I was like, this is the biggest joke in the world, right? Because clearly he's not even a good soccer player. And he knows it. So it really actually hurts self-esteem as opposed to boosting self-esteem. The other thing is what I was talking about earlier, which is the fake leadership. We give titles. Everybody works very hard because they want on their college resume things that indicate leadership, because that's what colleges are looking for. I just had this conversation with one of my clients who went to a college guidance counselor who said to her, open up a club in school, empowering girls, right? It looks good on her resume. So that's what she should do. And the reality is that that's not really what she's passionate about. And it's not, not to say bad things about her. It's just not where her passion is. It's not where she's going to really strive to succeed. And she's kind of half-assed doing it because it's going to look good on her resume. So first of all, I can tell you from my experience with college admissions officers that they see right through it. But it's also not putting her in a position to actually succeed and take a real leadership role, right? It's kind of forcing her to take something fake, which if it happens, I won't be surprised if she doesn't get the right support, somebody else ends up leading, if at all. And I saw that all the time and still see it in teen programs as, you're the, vice president of X in your youth group, but really the person doing it is the professional that was hired because you're busy, because whatever the reason is. And again, that doesn't actually build the skills and the self-esteem that they need for the rest of their lives. And the last thing is this always comes first. They always come first, right? And this is something that our generation of parents does, is we often put our kids first at our own expense. They come before everything. And therefore that becomes their expectation that you as their parents don't necessarily have a life or have needs. Their needs really need to come first, and therefore everything has to come second, which can cause a lot of stress in the house and a lot of tension when you or anyone else around them is not fulfilling what it is that they want. And what happens as a result when they move on from your nest in your home is that they come to the real world. And in their job, none of these things are true, right? They're not special. They're just one of many. Even if they have been accepted to a top lawyer's firm as an intern, they're still one of many, right? They're really not looked at as special. And if they want something, they don't necessarily get it because there are other priorities. If they don't take responsibility, if they don't fulfill on their commitments and their expectations, they get fired or they get kicked out of school, right? They flunk. Not everybody's a winner. In fact, rarely are they going to win. And if anything, they're going to fail many, many, many more times than they win. And I've seen this over and over and over again, which is kids that completely fall apart because they didn't win, or because they weren't first, because they didn't succeed. And all of you, I don't need to tell you, you know this. You know that the reality of life is that we fail exponentially more than we win. That is life. And so if we teach them that they win at everything, again, they completely fall apart because they just don't know how to cope with this feeling. And so not that it's easy to see your 10-year-old, 13-year-old, or 16-year-old deal with failure or with disappointment, but you're there to help them learn how to do that and how to do that in a healthy way, which later on when they have moved on is a lot harder. It's a lot harder, and they don't necessarily at that point want to admit that they have failed or life is difficult. So again, they find themselves in this very difficult situation. Again, please mute yourself. When I'm in this mode, I can't actually mute you. So please make sure to do that yourself.
No se puede, no traes calcetines.
again, making sure that they are learning these skills early on, make sure that they don't fall apart later on. Okay, one of the things that we see with kids in college today is that their parents don't find out how difficult things are until they are completely falling apart, because they don't want to tell you, because they believe that your impression of them and what is success is that they always have to be right. They always have to succeed. They always have to bring in the straight A's or whatever it is that your current expectation is of them. And if they don't do that, then they're not good enough or they don't measure up. And again, that they don't come first is obvious. So that is why those strategies are contributing to what we're seeing later on. The next thing that we're going to talk about is technology. And so, as you know, if you've been following me, technology is something that I talk about all the time. The reason that I talk about it all the time is because in the work that I've done with teens for over 25 years now, the difference and the shift that I can see in the last 8 years, let's say, and more so in the last 4 or 5 years, since almost everybody of a certain age has a smartphone, and if not a smartphone, then internet access is tremendous. And we are doing an injustice to the next generation because we don't know enough to guide them through this safely. And I can't say it more stronger. If that's a message that I want you to come out from tonight, is that this is a topic you have to get under control so you can do the right things by your kids. I'm not going to get into what all these things are tonight because I don't have time for it. That's why I teach a 5-week course on this. And even then we just touched the tip of the iceberg. It's a different world, and it's changing our world, because one of the things is this technology, as you all know, again, is changing quickly, dramatically, and drastically. And we don't have effective guidelines and strategies to deal with the impact of what that brings into our lives. So the first most important thing is tech addiction. And I will admit, I am addicted to my technology. There's a reason that that once a week I put down everything, my phone, my computer, I don't look at it. My clients know that there's one day a week where they know how to reach me if there's an emergency, because that's my deal with my VIP clients. But other than that, I will not be on my phone. I'm not on my computer. I disconnect because otherwise I can't. And I am 43. And the way technology is built, the way games are built, the way everything from Facebook, which your kids are not going to be on, but Instagram, whatever it is, they're built in order to create an addiction. They're built in order to make us want to come back, in order to release dopamine into our brain and get that feel good, coursing through our veins and wanting to do it again. And it is a real addiction. What it does to the brain is exactly the same thing as it does for cocaine and alcohol addiction. Same exact process in the brain. It is not any different. The only difference is that when we talk about alcohol and drugs, we're very clear on what's allowed and what's not allowed. When it comes to technology, we're a lot more loose. So we may know that we shouldn't let our kids be on it all day, but how many times do you see, or have you done it yourself, right? We stick a kid in front of the TV, or we give them a tablet to occupy them, or we're just happy that our kid is sitting and playing Fortnite because they're not bothering us right now and we can get some stuff done. It's done with good intentions, but we're not realizing what the impact is. And it is especially problematic with teens, because your teens at this point in their life, their brain is going through a huge development. There are 2 bursts during childhood where your kid is learning a lot. One is when they're infants, and the other one is during their teen years, where there's this explosion of neurons, their brain is growing, and it's got this kind of use it or lose it effect that's going on. So if they don't use different parts of their brain for social skills, learning how to communicate with one another in person, not over text, but in person, solve problems, deal with uncomfortableness, etc., at this stage of their life, they're going to have a really hard time doing it as adults, right? And these are qualities that they need to be functioning adults. So it's not only that there's this addiction going on, but their brain chemistry is actually being set on whatever it is they're doing right now. So where they're spending their time, that's how their brain is going to be set for the rest of their lives. And so it's important that we make sure that we're covering the important things. This is a time in life when approval from peers is more important than anything. It's more important than you.
For a minute.
Okay. Somebody's super excited and really not muted. Sorry, I was trying to see if I could
webinar, but
mute them, but I can't.
Social media.
So approval from peers, hopefully you guys can hear me okay. And I apologize in advance for the person who's speaking in the background. You know, if it's what we're gonna do is I'm gonna see if I can. Oh, there we go. Okay, so approval from peers is really important, right? At this stage in life, when you're a teenager, your parents, not that you're not important, you actually are extremely important in what you think is extremely important. So don't think that it's not, it is, but their peers are the ones who are going to tip the scale on what they end up doing or not. That's why who your kids hang out with is super important. It's why you should know who your kids are hanging out with and not just trust that it's okay. You should know this information. And they are more likely to give in to what their peers are pressuring them to do, right? And if they are on technology, part of what happens is once they connect to the internet, they have a smartphone, they're on apps, and there are lots of apps. There are apps that they, can be used there's no such thing as an app that's only good, by the way, except for one that I just recently signed up for, which is one where you can actually be seeing for somebody who's blind. So blind people shoot out their requests and you can answer it and help them choose what clothes to wear or whatever help they need, which is kind of cool. Total sorry for the sidetrack. I just thought it was the most amazing thing. But the majority of apps a lot of them can go both ways. They can be used for fun and excitement and communication and connection. And at the same time, they can be used for really super inappropriate things. And then there are apps that your kids should not have. They 100% should not have on their phone. If they do, it's a really bad idea, from things like Vault, which is a calculator, which sounds like a calculator, and the app icon looks like a calculator, but is really a place to hide videos and photos and things from people like you. Again, we talk about this in the course. So they are easily drawn into negative things, right? A close friend of mine, her 14-year-old daughter, who's no longer 14, I think she's graduating this year from high school, calls me really upset because as she described, her sweet, loving, caring, sensitive daughter got in trouble in school for being part of a bullying ring online. And she just doesn't understand how it happens. So there are a lot of reasons why it happens, which again, we can't go into right now, but when you're afraid of being the one who's going to be bullied, sometimes you're going to join in, right? Or sometimes you don't even realize it's happening and you're already there because they don't think before they text, right? They just do it because teens don't have any impulse control. And it's one thing when you have to say something to somebody in person. It's another thing when you can just text it, and they get in trouble a lot. One of the things we see is that technology is replacing human contact. And that means that, if I was talking to one of my clients and she, has just recently broke up from her boyfriend of 1.5 years, and they went through some significant challenges because they were only communicating over text. So they go to different schools, and when they saw each other in person, they would talk, and they would talk on FaceTime after school. But 95% of their communication would happen over text. And the amount of fighting, misunderstanding, mistakes that were made, right, even though they both knew better, were huge. And so they weren't learning. It took them a while to learn to eliminate that almost completely. It moved into only using text to arrange times to talk and to see each other because it was destroying their relationship, right? And, or this woman that was telling me a while back about her 11-year-old who went to a birthday party. There were 6 girls. They went out for dinner, and everybody except for her, was on their cell phone, right? She was the only one sitting around the table who wasn't on her phone, which made her feel horrible and left out, but also means that kids aren't just hanging out, right? I'm sure you've walked in, if you have teens or you've seen teens, right? You walk into a room and they're all sitting on their phone. They may be talking to each other through their phone, but that's actually not real conversation. It's not that there isn't value to it. It's not that it's not okay, but it's a lot harder to say things face to face, right? Again, if I had time, I would share with you some of the things that I've heard that boys say to girls or girls have said to boys over text that they would never, ever, ever say in person, but they feel like they can. It gives them a lot of courage and not always in the right direction. And most importantly is the coping skills, right? They're not learning how to cope and they're having a really hard time. Again, it is not that technology is bad. Technology, first of all, isn't going away. It's part of our life. There are a lot of incredible, amazing things that your teens can do, that we can do thanks to technology. I can connect with friends all over the world, and I do on a regular basis, which was never possible before. I have horrible spelling. I have a little bit of a learning disability. And so writing letters when I was a teen was painful because I was always embarrassed that there were going to be spelling mistakes and it was going to come out. And even now, if you guys read my newsletters, you know I have spelling mistakes. Even though I send it to editing, they always somehow slip through. It's just part of, who I am. I accept it. If, that's hard for somebody, that's okay. They don't have to follow me or read me. But as a teen, it's something that I struggled with a tremendous amount, but I learned to deal with it, right? I learned to deal with it because I learned to deal with what was important to me. And so we want to teach them how to use technology for the good, but they're not going to learn on their own to moderate themselves. They're not going to know when they're addicted. You're going to be able to see that. They're not going to know how to stop themselves. So if you already have a teen who has a phone and you try to take away their phone or tell them to get off the phone and you get what I call a teen tantrum, then you know you're already in trouble. Then there's already a problem. Okay, if they don't just take their phone and shut it off and put it away, then something's going on. And something's going on can mean a lot of different things. So it's not just one, but it means it needs to be investigated. The next thing that we're going to talk about, I'm just looking at the time because I want to make sure that we have plenty of time for your questions, is impatience, right? We want it all. We want it now. What the world of the internet and social media has done for us is that we expect things to happen really quickly. I remember myself sitting in front of a Commodore 64. That was our first computer in our house, and playing Pac-Man and learning how to type. Those were the two things that I could do on that computer. And waiting, I remember when I first got email and, waiting for that dial-up tone forever to kind of go through its process and connect and send. It was painful, right? It took forever. It took like 45 minutes to send an email, right? And now I was happened to have been on the phone with AppleCare yesterday and today because my keynote wasn't working. And there was a lag between what the representative was saying and mine. And it was so funny because we were both so impatient because we've gotten used to the fact that it just happens and it happens quickly, as opposed to appreciating the fact that we can be in two different countries and yet we're sharing a screen, and for that matter, us today, right? We're all in completely different places and we can do it and we can do it right now. And we've lost our patience. And in the real world, patience is critical. It's critical in terms of your relationship with your teens and your ability to wait out this stage of life where you say something, you know that they know better and they still make the mistake, right? Which is sometimes their fault and many times the way their brain is wired, right? And wait out, inappropriate behaviors and teaching them what your expectations are and how to do things differently, and going into a job and understanding that you're going to start from the bottom and work your way up, right? I meet with college students sometimes and their expectations of what it's going to be like in the workforce, they all want to be CEOs. They don't want to be at the bottom of the, of the workforce. No, nobody does. I didn't when I was there, but I had an understanding that that's just part of what it's going to take for me to climb up the ladder. And what we see in teens is they're like, well, I don't want to do that. And some of them don't, and some of them go off and they create their own companies, but that's not right for everybody. Not everybody can do that. And, teaching them to be patient with life and with processes, right? Relationships, love, partnership is all about patience and long-term and talking things through and being able to be there. The important things in life, let's put it that way, require patience, require waiting. But this little device, that I have sitting next to me right now, and even the one that I'm speaking to you through right now, what they do is they teach us to be impatient, right? Even little kids shows right now, right? Watch a little kids show that the scene switches every 30 seconds, right? It's hard for them watching old movies because they're dragged out and they take longer. That is something, right? The world's going in a certain direction, and at some point it's going to swing back. What you can do now is you can help bring that swing back to normalcy and not wait for the world to catch up with us, not wait for the world to realize that, we've gone too far. This is not actually serving our purposes, and that it's bringing great things, but it's doing too much damage. So let's bring it back. So we need to do that. We need to create that. And so where does all this actually leave us? It leaves us in a place where what I see is parents doing three things: parenting from fear of what might be, right? What's going to happen? What is going to look like? And when I do workshops with parents, I always say, what would it look like if you parented without fear? If you weren't actually afraid, would your parenting be different? I want you to ask yourself that question. If you were parenting right now without any fear, you didn't have to worry about anything, what would that look like? The second is we worry. We worry about what is right now. Are we doing the right things? Are they doing the right things? Have we set up what we need to? Haven't we? We're constantly in that worry. And we hesitate about what are the right steps that we need to take. We're not really sure because who has the right answer? And do we have the right answer? Or do we have time to think about the right answer? Right? We're all over-programmed and over-busy. I was watching a documentary the other day, and one of the guys was saying, the expectation was that when we got technology into our lives is that it was going to free up time. That was the big promise of technology, is that would it free up our time, and what it has done instead is taken over our time, right? We have very little free time. And what that leaves us in is in a place that is not healthy. It's not supportive definitely not supportive of successful communication with your teen, because if you communicate with your teen from fear and worry, and if you're not clear about what your expectation is and what you want, then it doesn't work. That's when they fight back. That's when they are obnoxious. And by the way, it's not that they're not going to be occasionally obnoxious. That's part of what they have to do in order to grow up and be successful adults. But there's a difference between occasionally talking off, speaking back to you or saying something inappropriate, and then being able to catch themselves and apologize later, versus that being the regular way of communicating. Or maybe they're not communicating with you at all, right? If your teen doesn't feel like they can talk to you, often they're just not going to talk at all. And so there are ways to change that. And this call isn't about communication, but there are really, there are ways to communicate and function with a teen so they will talk to you. And I've seen many parents shift the way they do things without ever talking to their kid about it, and things start changing. It's really quite amazing. So we're coming to the practical part of our conversation, which is really, what can you do? What are the things that you can do today in order to make a difference in your teens' lives and in your family life? And whether, by the way, I know often educators or principals, etc., join our calls. So this is true for you as well. The first thing, second, I'm going to take a drink, is keep up to date and keep learning, stay relevant. This is a world that is constantly changing. I can tell you that about myself. Ever since I have gotten into this world of following, teens, technology, etc., things change every other day, right? It's like the apps that I teach on my course, many of them are still around. Many of them has changed. I'm constantly changing the apps that I are on the worksheets, because every other day there's a new app, right? There's a new invention that we need to deal with. Things are changing. And so you need to find the way that works for you to keep up to date, to keep up to speed. I don't know how many of you know, for example, that the new iOS on Apple suddenly gives an opportunity for parent controls and for actually really seeing the amount of time that your kid spends on the phone on what app. You can actually see where they're spending their time on their phone. So it's no longer, I used it on myself the other day and I was like, okay, this is a really great wake up, right? And reality of where am I actually using my phone? How am I using my phone? Am I using it effectively or am I wasting my time on it? And in what way? It was really actually helpful even for me to look at myself, let alone for you to use it as a tool to help your teens manage themselves. The other thing is you want to set clear rules and boundaries. This is really, really important. Teens and kids in general hate rules and they hate boundaries. And that is their job, and that is totally, totally okay. It's totally fine for them to hate them. But the truth is that rules and boundaries make them feel safe. Not only are they really important, but they actually make them feel more safe and secure. Research again shows us, they did some research on college students, and what they found out is that teens who had parents who set very clear rules and guidelines described themselves, first of all, they were more successful, but they also described themselves as feeling more safe and secure as teens, feeling less afraid, feeling less scared, feeling more confident about themselves. The other thing is you want to set off screen time, not just daily, but extended periods of time. You don't have to go to the extreme like me and take a whole day off. It can be a few hours off. It can be things like I described later on this page, like going out with your family with one phone. When you go out to dinner, not everybody needs a cell phone. When you're going out as a family, you're going out to spend time with each other and talk to each other. All the phones can stay home except for one, so you have one in case of emergency. But, because we don't have pay phones anymore. But they don't need to take their phones everywhere. If they're hanging out with your friends, and this I talk about, like, enlist your community. Talk to the other parents. If you're one of the parents listening right now and you have kids who don't yet have a phone and most of their friends don't, bring the parents together. I know a group of moms who came together and bought their kids dumb phones, right? Phones that have the ability to call and to text. That's it. No applications, nothing complicated. They're like, we want them to have it for safety and security. And if they want to connect over text one-on-one, that's okay. But we don't want them we don't want phones that have internet access. And they're not as easy to find as they used to be. Trust me, because I got my mother one this summer because she insisted that that's what she wanted. In addition, she has a smartphone in addition, but when she travels, she likes to have a dumb phone. But it can be done. So make the choice. Again, it's got to be the right age. You gotta create those rules and boundaries so they're age appropriate. Right? Rules and regulations for a 13-year-old are not the same as they are for a 17-year-old. But make sure that they have time in their day off screens. I know, especially those of you who have kids who are addicted to Fortnite, it is really hard because of the way the game is set up to make that happen. You have to create that space. If you don't create that space, they are not going to create it for themselves. Okay, they're not going to create it. I have a client that I work with who has trouble. She's, I think, 17. She has trouble sleeping. And one of the first things I told her is, like, you have to get that phone out of your room. You have to get that phone out of your room. That is not making your life easier. As I said, enlist your community. Whether you have and can use your community that is in person, that is the best. Because they are the ones who are around you. Then it's not just, oh, everybody has one, but I don't, right? Which is, by the way, how my nephew got his phone. He was the last kid in his class to get a cell phone. And this was when he was 9, maybe 10. If there had been a community coming together saying, wait a second, we don't want to do this, that would have not been the situation, right? So you can try. Sometimes it's going to work. Sometimes it's not. If you can't find like-minded people around you, then create the community virtually that you could in real life, right? That is like some of the communities that I try to create in some of our private Facebook groups, or in the secret private Facebook group that we have for the social media course, where you can ask the questions that you want. You can share without being worried about what people are going to think. You know, one of the things that I see so often and pains me a great deal is that when your kid is 2, it's legitimate to post online and say, you know, my kid is having a tantrum in the middle of the supermarket or undressing or whatever, you know, I need help. But when they become teenagers, we don't feel that we can say, you know, my kid is struggling or they're having a hard time or I am having a hard time with them and I need help. So I'm trying to create those kind of spaces for you. And I know that there are many others who are doing it. So find the one that's right for you, so you can ask the questions that you have and get the answers that you want. I am reminding you that you can use the chat feature right now to ask questions either privately to me so nobody will see, and then just make sure you click on just for moderator, or in general, and I'm happy to answer them afterwards. But what I want to share with you right now is I want to share with you an opportunity to learn with me further, and that is my social media. I can now call it Social Media Secrets for Parents of Teens. It's a 5-week online course. It is pre-recorded so you can watch it when it's convenient for you. I re-record the sessions every once in a while to make sure that they're up to date. And they come with worksheets. They come with various things like, what's it called? Like social media contracts, which are a family contract as well as individual contracts for age. It tells you what's I believe is appropriate per age. We talk about apps, we talk about following, we talk about relationships, we talk about bullying. We talk about a lot of different things. We cover a lot throughout the course, and we have a private Facebook group where you can, first of all, post the things that you're doing, but also ask questions, share, get support from people around you. One of the important processes that we work through is actually figuring out how you can create a social media contract that works. One of the things that we focus on is communication, right? Because I get a lot of parents who say to me, well, I want to do it, or I have one, but they won't cooperate, or they're not interested. And so if you do it in the right way, you can actually not only get your kids enlisted in the process, but coming up with their own consequences of what's going to happen and understanding why this is actually important, not seeing it as something, that you're just trying to do, as well as avoiding the significant pitfalls. So you're welcome to check that out. I have the address here. You can take a look. You'll be able to see what it comes with. There's an option that's with coaching. There's an option that is without coaching and just the course and the support. Do whatever is best for you, whatever you feel will best support your needs. Do a different course. I believe that this is a great course, but whatever you do, make sure that you stay up to date, and that you actually know what's happening. I'm going to stop sharing my screen here. If you have questions, by the way, or need something, always feel free to email me at tova@tovagar.com. I'm always here. I'm always happy to help and support you in whatever it is that you feel that you need. Everybody is in a different place. Everybody who's come to this call today, everybody who will listen to this call in the future is coming because of their own needs. And so what I want to make sure that you do is take from this what works for you. Figure out where you're at and take the information and then decide what is going to best serve you moving forward, right? Because one of the challenges of, this format is that, I may see some of your names and some of them not, across the screen, but I don't actually know. So we've got somebody who's raised her hand, so I'm going to give you an opportunity to ask a question. Michelle? Oh,
me?
Yep.
There you go. I just curious, are there courses for teens that can take this from a teen perspective that could help them?
So the answer to that is yes, I do teach. This summer, I actually offered courses for teens in different categories, both for teens before having their phone, those who already have it or are deep in it, and then for those looking to college and kind of saying, what does my online profile look like? Is it serving me or not? And how do I create a positive profile? As of right now, what I'm doing is parents who are interested in doing it are bringing together their kids and their friends, and we're doing it locally. for a couple of reasons. One, because then what it allows me to do is work with the kids and then work with the parents as well. So you're on the same page, right? They're getting it from their perspective. They're hearing it from somebody who is not their teacher or their parent. They're with their peers. So everybody's hearing the same thing. And at the same time, I can give the parents some tools to continue the conversation and learn how to do it. So that's what I'm doing right now. I can definitely keep you, you can send me an email and I can keep you up to speed. You can let me know how old your kids are and what you're looking for. And I can keep you in mind when I do them again, open to the public, to just whoever signs up. So those are both possibilities.
So parent and teens friends together
So it's basically let's say you have, we'll give you an example. What do you have? Son, daughter?
I have a 14-year-old daughter and an 11-year-old son.
Okay. So let's start with, let's say, the 11-year-old son. We bring together him and his friends and we do a session for them, just for the boys, on what it means. You're about to get a phone. What do you need to know? Or you're playing online. We design it to meet what your needs are.
Okay. So, but the parents are not.
They are not
so
present.
Only
No.
Okay.
No. And then no. And then if we want, we do a session right afterwards for the parents where I share with you the things that you need to know as parents and how to continue the conversation. And I share with you what I did with the boys. One of the things that I have learned from my many years doing workshops is that if I do workshops with teens with their parents present, they don't share anything. So unless it's a parent-teen workshop that I do in person and I prepare the parents in advance, which is, I'll do when I do in-person workshops, then that does work. But otherwise, in this kind of format, the teens just don't talk. They don't actually share what's really going on because they don't want the parents to know.
Yeah, I don't know if my daughter in a group setting would share everything that she's doing with her friend.
Probably not. I can tell you from this, this summer, the group, the 15, 16-year-old group that I did, I did a few. I did a 16 and 18, but I did one group, which was a mother who brought together her daughter and her friends. And first of all, none of them wanted to be there, which is totally fine. And, I always start my conversations with teens saying, how many of you wanted to be here? I'm assuming nobody, right? And they laugh, and it's usually the case, and that's fine. Because I believe that there are certain things we should tell our kids that they need to do, right? Whether they want to be there or not. And these girls, two of them, we had, I think, 5 or 6 girls, right? 2 of them really didn't want to be there, and they were even together in the same room. And everybody else was kind of in different places. And so for a long time, they just listened. And, and I do what I do. I mean, there's a reason I do what I do, and I'm good at it. And so, at first it was kind of like, nodding or making faces or whatever. And at some point they finally opened up, and I was like, am I boring you? And she's like, no, I'm actually listening. This is interesting. I was like, okay, I'll take that as a compliment.
Okay.
So, they don't necessarily need to want to be there. They most likely will not want to be there. And they don't also have to share. They just need to listen. You never know who's going to share. So.
Okay.
Cool.
Thank you.
You're very welcome. Anybody else? I'm just trying to take a look. If there are any other hands up or any other questions? Okay, so I see somebody wrote me in the chat. They wanted to know about the course, whether they needed to be present. So that you don't need to be present. The whole idea of the course is that you can join whenever works for you. I designed it like that intentionally. When I first started doing these courses, I did them live. And one of the things that I found out is that it's just everybody's on a different time zone. It was hard for people to show up live. And so you can do it when you want. And not everybody even joins the Facebook group. But when you do, you get a tremendous amount out of it. Because first of all, the people there are really nice. And second of all, you'll get my support. So if you ask the questions, if you do the work, I've seen great results from it. As in everything, you got to do the work, right? You like listening is great, but you got to actually do the work afterwards. If you have a specific issue, I always recommend taking the coaching, because then we can do some laser coaching on whatever it is that you're facing right now. Let's see. Any other questions before we finish up? Hey, and I'm even proud of myself. We're very close. Yep. We got another question coming in. Is there an app that kids can use to connect with a friend where they don't have a phone, but just a tablet? My daughter is 11, or is an email address better? Okay, so first of all, what you should all know is that once your kid has internet access on a device like a tablet, it's as if they have a phone. They can download every app that you can download on a phone. They can use all of them. The only difference is that they don't have access all the time. They only have access when they have Wi-Fi. So it's not, if you're thinking, and by the way, I've had this. In fact, one of my oldest clients came to me, her mother came to me because she found out on her iPod, she found sexting. If you don't know what that is texting with sexual content on her 12-year-old's iPod. She didn't even know she had texting capabilities. So there are lots of apps that they can use to connect. I would recommend email if possible. It depends again on what kind of connection they're looking for. So if it's a long distance friend and they just want to kind of more journal and write, then email is great. But if they're looking for a quick text-like capability, then you have everything from WhatsApp to, again, it depends if you want to be able to monitor or not. WhatsApp, you can't really monitor unless you go into the tablet and go into the app and take a look. Snapchat, you definitely can. And also she's too young for it. You want to make sure, by the way, that the apps are age appropriate. Most apps are 13 and up. And you want to make sure that they stick to that. But again, that's a whole another conversation. So yeah, there are lots of apps. You just go in and even search texting, texting with a friend. There are a million of them. Yeah. By the way, she could even text using your text messaging on the tablet, assuming the tablet's connected to your phone. Does that help? What is the cost of the 5-week program? Honestly, I have to go in and check because I don't remember. That's what I have an assistant for. Well, here, I can share with you. Let's see if I can share the screen again. Nope, something happened to my Zoom, so I can't share the screen, so let me scroll down. It is, the 5-week course without the coaching is $349. With the coaching, it is $459. What that includes is the 5 weekly 1-hour trainings. We do, in addition, another session of questions and answers, which I do approximately once a month. We have a private Facebook group. You get family and individual social media contracts and templates. You get ongoing support from me. You get the list of apps, which to follow, which to avoid, which can go both ways. You'll get regular updates in the group also on new things that come up in the Facebook group. When new things come up, I learn new things, I stick them in there. You get worksheets to go through the various processes that we talk about. Everybody gets one 30-minute private coaching call. And if you get the extra coaching, you get another hour or 2 30-minute coaching calls. So you can actually create your family plan and really adapt it for your own needs. I hope that answered the question. Yes, I was looking for the fastest. Okay, that I can monitor. So yeah, so monitoring, just make sure when you download, that was a question, sorry, related to the app about texting. Just make sure that it is something that actually can be monitored. That's all. In general, for your 11-year-olds or kids who are starting, you want to be monitoring them. It's really, really important. And it's not a matter of privacy. One of the things you have to teach them is that nothing is private online. But also the analogy that I use is that you're not going to give them the keys to the car and let them drive and say good luck. You actually need to teach them. So that's it's the same thing. Once you learn that they are doing the same thing, then you're okay. I hope that is helpful. Anybody else have any other questions? What I'll do, I'm going to stick, just because for some reason there's something up with the app and I can't, I'm putting in the, everyone, okay. Everyone, I'm just putting in the link for the course so you can see it. And sorry, what's the best way to monitor? That is a much longer conversation than we have time for today. There are a whole host of questions that you want to ask yourself when you come up with a question of monitoring. You want to be asking yourself, first of all, how old is your child? You want to ask yourself, what is their level of responsibility that they show in real life? You want to ask yourself, what are they doing? What is the information that you want to know and that you're hoping to know? Based on all these questions, and this is part of what happens in the course, is I give you these questions so you can figure that out for yourself, as well as my recommendations. You then are going to decide what kind of monitoring you want to be doing. And so, because monitoring can be putting out, there are various programs that will allow you to see every keystroke your teen makes on their phone or on their computer. And then there's monitoring where they hand over their phone at the end of the day, and you have the ability, if you choose to look at it, and you're going to occasionally spot check. There are a lot of different ways to monitor, but to give you the right answer to that, we need to know the factors, right? Which is, who is your kid? What is their story? Where are they on their developmental stage and in terms of life? And thank you to Sunny for making an appearance and saying hello. So we are over our time for tonight. Feel free to email me if you have any other questions and to reach out. I'm more than happy to answer and be of help. Come join the course. It's a good one. Those who have taken it, and you can see some testimonials on the page, all testify that they learned a lot. And it was helpful for their process and where they were at. And most importantly, it gives you an opportunity for back and forth. And as you're trying to figure this out, to get support, not just from me, but from other parents who are figuring it out as well. And in a safe space where you can be honest about what's going on with you and your family. So thank you for taking the time to be with me here live. Thank you for all those who are going to join us on the replay later. You are doing a very important thing. Taking the time, learning, figuring out what to do. You are already way ahead of the curve and way ahead of most parents. And trust me, I know, because I talk to a lot of parents, I see a lot of parents, you are way ahead of the curve, and you should feel very, very good about that. And what you want to do now is actually take the action steps, because learning isn't enough. You actually need to make it happen. You need to make it happen in a way that actually works for your family, is going to be effective for your family. One of the challenges of, when people say, well, can I have your social media contract? Yeah, you can. I'm happy to share it, because first of all, I'm happy to share it because I want you to use it, but also because the reality is that it's copying and pasting doesn't work. You're all different. Everybody's unique. Everybody's different. Every family situation is different. And you got to do what works for you and what's going to be best for your family and your kids. So I wish you a lot of luck. I'm here for you and I'm here to help. Again, thank you for taking the time. It's an honor for me to be able to do this. And I look forward to connecting with you all again soon.